these are players that while you have the opportunity, you should go ahead and ship them off of your fantasy team because odds are in the playoffs, they're not going to help you as much as they're helping your team now, and we're going to capitalize and get some better value. Do us a huge favor. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'd appreciate you joining the community. It helps us out a ton. But let's get into our first set of sells here. These are two guys that we would know better than you that they are sells because we watch every snap and we've watched every snap of both of their young careers. And we know that unless the Colts get smart, which they won't, that Michael Pittman and Josh Downs both are going to take significant hits to their production in fantasy football when and if, and when I say when and if, I mean when, the Colts bring back Anthony Richardson to start as quarterback. This is going to happen. And the Colts may be trying to play this off as like, oh, Anthony Richardson, we're just going to let him get healthy. We're really just giving him some extra time. He's the emergency quarterback. What we know and what the Colts admitted to us today is that they know that Joe Flacco is a better quarterback, and it's not even close. Yep. And when you're talking about the fantasy production between these guys, when you've seen Flacco come in and play, Michael Pittman the last 3 weeks, 17 points, 14 points, and 12.5 points. The first 3 weeks, 7 points, 5 points, 7 points. What about Josh Downs? Josh Downs was injured the first 2 games of the season. You only really saw one game where he played with Anthony Richardson, and he had 5 points. With Joe Flacco, Josh Downs has been the player that when I got on a video in the offseason and I said that Josh Downs was my most rostered player in fantasy football leagues, this is why. Because Josh Downs is an amazing talent. He was so underrated in the draft. He's so underrated coming into this year. And if he had a better quarterback, what would you see from Josh Downs? Last 3 games, 22 points on 9 targets, 15 points on 12 targets, 19 points on 9 targets. Josh Downs is a very good NFL wide receiver that could be a very good fantasy wide receiver if he had a quarterback. A lot of people are going to take these last 3 games from Josh Downs and say, Josh Downs, he came back from injury and now he's killing it for me, and I feel really good about that. And if you have Josh Downs on your team, if you have Michael Pittman on your team, what I'm going to tell you, heart to heart as a Colts fan, is I don't trust them and you shouldn't either. There is no way that they let Joe Flacco start over Anthony Richardson much longer. And if they do, then these guys are absolute holds. Borderline buys. If they did that, if you don't agree with me and you think, you know what, I think they're going to roll with Joe Flacco, by all means, hold these guys on your fantasy team because Josh Downs is a league winner. Where he was being drafted, he would be a league winner. If Joe Flacco were his quarterback for the rest of the season.
He is salvaging my flock league season.
He absolutely is. He absolutely is. And Michael Pittman the same way. Michael Pittman is a wide receiver too. That's what he is with Joe Flacco. Yep. With Anthony Richardson, he's a wide receiver 4. It's bad. It's bad.
Now let me play a little devil's advocate here with you because assuming that Anthony Richardson comes back, which I would assume he comes back even though they've been super shady about all the stuff. Yeah. And Steichen is literally quoted as saying like, yeah, we just went through the whole week-long process and seeing how he was feeling. He just wasn't there yet. I was like, he logged multiple full practices. What do you mean he wasn't there yet? He was ready to come back in the game against Pittsburgh. I think you don't want him to come back, but you're forced to, and you're trying to delay the inevitable. But what I will say is even if AR does come back, how long do you think he actually stays on the field?
You mean in terms of injury, in terms of getting beat out?
Both.
I don't trust him. I think he stays on the field. I mean, injury would be one thing, but I'm not going to bet on injury. I'm not going to hold Michael Pittman and Josh Downs and bet that Anthony Richardson's just going to get injured and Joe Flacco is going to be their quarterback.
It's starting to look pretty bettable because this is the 4th injury and like 5 total games.
I know, but I do think you could probably get pretty freaking good value for these guys right now on the trade market, and that's why I'm willing to sell
I hope so.
Right now.
I'm going to be shopping them because if I can, the risk alone, I agree with you, is enough to be able to sell them because especially Josh Downs. Josh Downs has just been incredible.
if you can get any level of wide receiver 1, for Josh Downs, if you get any level of wide receiver 2 or 3, you're taking it for these guys. Yeah. And you're probably not getting when I say wide receiver 1, I mean a wide receiver 1 on their own team, right? Mm-hmm. Not a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy football. You're not getting that for Michael Pittman or Josh Downs. But I'm talking about guys that you even feel better about moving forward. Christian Kirk is a good example. You can get Christian Kirk from Michael Pittman. I'm very tempted to do that because Christian Kirk is better than Michael Pittman when Michael Pittman has Anthony Richardson at his quarterback position. So there are a lot of guys where you might think, okay, that's a little bit questionable. To me, it's not questionable at all. If Anthony Richardson is these 2 guys' quarterback, they are absolute sells. They will not perform at a high enough level for them to be beneficial or league winners for your fantasy football team. And because of that, I sadly will sell my favorite Colts wide receiver. By the way, this is after we told you that we thought they were going to be fine with Anthony Richardson. Bottom line is, we were wrong. We underestimated how bad Anthony Richardson would look. We won't do that again. And right now we're going to tell you to do the smart thing and bet that he's going to continue to be bad at football. So we can help you get your fantasy football team on the right track by telling you specifically who you should sell on your fantasy football team. A lot of times it's tough to figure that stuff out. We do team reviews all the time in the form of these awesome team blueprints. What we do is basically you submit your team to us on flockfantasy.com/domain. You can use the link in the pinned comment, link in the description. You can use the My Teams page. You can figure out where you are ranked according to our My Teams tool and our power rankings of the league. Then you can submit that team for review. We will create a team blueprint for you. We sit down, we analyze your team step by step, give you specific buys and sells, also grade out your entire team. We give you back your completed team blueprint, and you can use that to make moves in your fantasy football league. So like I said, link is in the pinned comment and link is in the description if you want to get one of those team reviews. We do them personally, and we'd love to do one for you as well. But let's get back to it.
Yeah, I think we're going to continue to bet against Sam Laporta for the rest of the season. This might be unpopular because he did have a good day off of 1 target and 1 reception for 52 yards and a touchdown. So really, really solid day for Sam Laporta, who has been incredibly underwhelming this season. Honestly, that offense overall has just been a big surprise, not necessarily in the positive way, because you were betting on a lot with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And again, he's had a pretty nice floor, but even Amon-Ra hasn't gotten the amount of consistent volume that you expected from him, drafting him top 6. And Sam Laporta has not been what you thought he'd be. Jamison Williams is outproducing expectations by miles. David Montgomery is outproducing Jahmyr Gibbs consistently. It's just all over the place right now. And I think from a fantasy perspective, I mean, as good as that offense looks from a fantasy perspective, we weren't expecting this. Thanks, Ben Johnson. But with Sam Laporta, I mean, if you can get anything that's consistently startable, that's a wide receiver or running back in exchange for Sam Laporta, I'm freaking doing it. I don't know how many takers you're going to have on a 1 target, 1 reception, 52 yards and touchdown performance from Sam Laporta. I do believe that there are people who are interested in buying low on him because there are so many tight end deficient teams in fantasy football at the moment. So you're going to have guys that are like streaming tight end every single week in your league that are trying to find that elite tight end, that diamond in the rough that's just waiting to go crazy. And Sam Laporta is a pretty hot pickup. I mean, he should be in theory, granted, because he is in one of the best offenses in the NFL. But at this point, Avery and I are so past betting on any consistent tight end production outside of George Kittle this year that Sam Laporta is like selling for what you can get within reason for a nice flexible option that has decent upside. Because at this point, any upside is better than Sam Laporta's. He's not getting the volume. I mean, you think I'm just pulling this out of my butt. Like look at his snap share and opportunity. He's on the field for 42 snaps this game where they drop like 40 plus points and he only runs 19 routes. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams both ran 24, 25 routes. Sam Laporta, again, third behind both of them. He's in there for a lot of the running sets that they have offensively, and he gets 1 target out of those 42 snaps. 1. And I just showed you his game log. This is not just a one-time thing. Like, this is fluky. They have him on the field and they are not throwing him the ball. They're not doing it like they did last year. And they're not doing it. This is really the big case in point for me too. If this were like, if he had gotten 3 or 4 targets, a few receptions, and a red zone touchdown, I don't think I'd be going into this week saying like he's a smash sell, because he would be getting usage where I want him to get usage from. In the red zone. That's how he was productive last year and finished as a tight end 1, is he was getting so much red zone usage. Now, this red zone usage is not updated for the Cowboys game, but it's not going to make a difference because he didn't do anything, again, outside of that 1 reception in the Cowboys game. He is 18th in the league among tight ends in red zone targets with 2. 2. Not going to cut it. Sell Sam Laporta.
That's really sad. What a fall from grace.
It's tragic. Yeah.
Okay, so don't get mad about this because there's gonna be a caveat with this one. But the next sell we're gonna have on here is Tank Dell. And this is, I feel like you're gonna understand after I explain this. Obviously, Tank Dell has been much better since Nico Collins has left the field, right? You saw him this week in New England. He had his first full game and he had 18.5 points, 9 targets, 7 receptions, and a touchdown. There is absolutely no doubt, because we have not only so far what we've seen this year, but all of last year to prove that when he is the wide receiver 2 in a CJ Stroud offense, he's going to be this good. And maybe, just maybe, actually not even maybe, you definitely shouldn't sell Tank Dell right this second, but he's definitely a sell high candidate starting now and extending towards the end of Nico Collins' IR stint. Because when Nico Collins comes back, there is pretty much no chance that Tank Dell can continue any sort of production like this. You've seen him be off the field during 12 personnel sets. And obviously, while Nico Collins is out, you've seen Tank Dell on the field during 12 personnel sets. The fact of the matter is, the Texans are running more 12 personnel when Joe Mixon and when Dameon Pierce are healthy. And now that both of them are back and healthy, you're going to see, again, while Nico is hurt, Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell on the field. When Nico comes back, you're going to see Tank Dell's snap percentage drop a little bit again. It's going to dip down because they're going to go back and play some more 12 personnel with those two running backs that they like playing, both of whom played very well today against the Patriots defense. And then you're going to see Tank Dell be off the field for some of those snaps now. He's going to run less routes and get less opportunity. Now, Tank Dell, even though he was still running, this about the same amount of routes and getting about the same amount of snaps here today, he got more opportunity because, again, there's more love to be spread around without Nico Collins in that offense. So again, I don't think Tank Dell is like, hey, sell him right now, sell him this week. I think what I'm saying is this. The sell window for Tank Dell starts now, and it goes for the next 3 weeks. And so if you have Tank Dell, you obviously know at the beginning of the year, 8 points, 2 points, 11 points, 7 points. Didn't play against Jacksonville. You know that he was disappointing, especially for where you drafted him in your fantasy leagues, because he was mostly going 4th, 5th round in fantasy football drafts. And at that rate, what he's performing at, they're averaging 7-8 points a game. It doesn't cut it. You know that. I know that. And so if you own Tank Dell, I think you are actually looking for an opportunity to sell Tank Dell. And yes, granted, Tank Dell over the next 3 weeks is probably going to be ranked as the top 24 wide receiver in our rankings.
Yep.
And rightfully so.
Yep.
Because we've seen that Tank Dell is going to perform at that level when he is, again, the wide receiver 2 in this Houston Texans offense. Yep. The problem is, and the problem remains, that when and if and when Nico Collins does come back, Tank Dell is going to see a severe drop in production. He's going to be about what you saw at the beginning of the season. Yeah,
and I think one concerning metric that you're looking at here that has not gotten better even since the Nico Collins injury is his yards per reception. A lot of the reason we liked Tank Dell, even heading into this year, is his yards per reception was just phenomenal. He's very explosive. He had a lot of big play upside last year, a lot of big play ability, scoring 50, 60 yard touchdowns here and there. And again, you don't want to bet on that every single week, but it gave him a nice, upside. He was a nice upside play every single week. Now he's not doing that. His yards per reception last year was 15.1. It's down to 10.5 this year. It's like 60% of what it used to be, which is crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
But if he were getting consistent targets, this would be a good thing, right? Because you'd say, okay, this production is actually more sustainable now that he's getting a little bit less of an ADOT.
Well, you would expect more yak, and his yak has gone way down as well. It's
not a good thing. It shows how his role has changed in this offense.
Yeah.
And again, the next couple weeks, all right, you get Tank Dell, you use Tank Dell maybe wins you a couple weeks. But if you get a killer offer for Tank Dell this week, you think about it. Again, you have to keep in mind, you're probably only doing that if you're undefeated or one loss. But after next week, definitely going to take some good offers. The week after that, maybe people catch on at that point. But again, Tank Dell, the main thing is he saw an increase in the snap percentage today, and you're not going to see that with Nico on the field. You just won't. Nico's the wide receiver 1 there. Stephon Diggs is the wide receiver 2, and Tank Dell is the wide receiver 3. When all 3 of those guys are healthy, Tank Dell, unfortunately, is the odd man out. And so, again, the sell window starts now and it extends to the next 3 weeks. You can decide when you are personally comfortable with selling him.
Yeah, I think it's very clear how the wide receiver room is really shaking out in Green Bay. And you saw that this week where every single one of those wide receivers was actually productive. Obviously, Dontavion Wicks left the game early, so that kind of shook up the opportunity there. I think a lot of what Romeo Doubs did from a production perspective could have been attributed to Dontavion Wicks leaving early. In that game, Christian Watson obviously breaks away that big play for the touchdown. Jaden Reed just gets he gets the upper hand with the targets and the opportunity. It actually is interesting to note that in this game, Romeo Doubs actually led all wide receivers in snaps just next to Tucker Kraft at the tight end position with 60. Romeo Doubs had 54 snaps, 30 routes run, and 4 total targets. Jaden Reed, who we believe in is the number 1 option from a fantasy perspective every single week for the rest of the season for the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love, he only ran 24 routes on 39 snaps and had 6 targets. He still out-targeted everyone on that offense with less snaps, less opportunity overall. And he still had the most volume. So I'm looking at Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, and I'm looking at this game, and I'm like, man, they went up against the Arizona Cardinals. Let's freaking go. I am so pumped. I am so optimistic that they are going to be able to maintain and sustain this production against opponents like Houston, Detroit, San Francisco, Detroit, Seattle, Minnesota,
Detroit,
Chicago. Yeah, because they're interdivision. I said Detroit twice because they're interdivision.
You didn't mention Detroit.
Detroit as well.
Detroit,
so look, I don't want to be a downer on the Green Bay Packers wide receivers. I think altogether, all four of them together are incredibly effective. They really truly are from an NFL perspective in the way they're schemed up in that offense. They are truly 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. They really, really are. Jaden Reed is the best fantasy option. He's the most consistent fantasy option. Romeo Doubs will not be scoring 2 touchdowns off of 3 receptions every single week. I do not have to do a statistical breakdown for you to know that for a fact. And you don't have to look far into Christian Watson's past history to know that he is touchdown or bust. Touchdown or bust. He is 15 points or he is less than 5. That's just a fact with Christian Watson. He really is Alec Pierce in a better offense, is exactly what he is. So be wary of these two guys if you have any interest in these guys, because they are very intriguing names because of how good and explosive and effective the offense is as a whole. There's so many mouths to feed there at the end of the day. Jaden Reed is going to get a lot of the relevant opportunity, I think, consistently. And Josh Jacobs, again, don't count out Josh Jacobs, who we have as a buy, is just going to continue to put up more and more production in the red zone as well.
Ready to celebrate something?
Yeah.
Mark Andrews had 15.5 points today.
Let's go. He's not actually dead. He was pumped too.
He's not dead.
He was pumped. He had some nice catches
today. So you would assume
he looked good today.
Yeah, he looked great. You would assume, since he looked so good and he was actually scoring fantasy points, you assume, okay, Mark Andrews, he's now getting starting tight end snaps, right? Wrong.
Oh,
not true actually. Isaiah Likely outsnapped Mark Andrews today, still 46-34, and you might think, oh, Mark Andrews, he scored that many points today. He outscored Isaiah Likely by a lot. Mm-hmm. So Mark Andrews probably got more targets than Isaiah Likely, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wrong. Same amount of targets.
Excuse me?
4. Yeah. You might say, okay, now that Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson are kind of getting their chemistry back, you might say, well, I think across different schemes, across different formations for the Baltimore Ravens, he probably played more. And now we're going to see that increase in usage, right?
Right,
Wrong.
right. Oh.
Mark Andrews, according to PFF, played 100% in 12 personnel, 50% in 11 personnel, 40% in 21 personnel, and 6% in 22 personnel, which was pretty much exactly the same as every other game he's been in this season. When you're looking at his overall percentage of snaps, actually was less than last game. Again, the main thing is he actually caught a couple of the balls that were thrown to him, which was a step in the right direction, if we're being honest. But he got a touchdown. And this is like, oh my gosh, you got a touchdown. Let's go.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people I think are going to take this about Mark Andrews and say, okay, Mark Andrews, we can take a deep breath. We drafted him in the 5th round, and I've got take lock, so I'm just going to say that Mark Andrews had a slow start to the season, but he's actually good. And the red flag before with Mark Andrews was his usage, and that he wasn't on the field enough, and that he was being outsnapped, and that he wasn't going to get enough opportunity to be productive every week. The red flags with Mark Andrews now is that he's not going to be on the field enough, and he's getting outsnapped, and he's not going to get enough opportunity to be fantasy productive. In other words, nothing changed.
Oh.
What changed this week is he scored a touchdown. And I'm as happy as anybody that Mark Andrews scored a touchdown. This is coming from somebody who did draft at least 1 or 2 Mark Andrews this year in fantasy football. I want him to be productive more than you want him to be productive. But the red flags are there, and they're not going away. And unless something drastic changes about how the Ravens are going to run their offense, Mark Andrews is not going to be doing this on a week-to-week basis. Mm-hmm. When you have games of 3, 9, 0, 0, 9, and 15, which one is the outlier there? I don't think
probably
this is
the 15er.
And what we have to look no further than targets. Targets tell us everything. I will blindly follow targets. We have to go no further than his targets on the year to know that there was really nothing different. Targets 2, 5, 1, 1, 5, and 4. Okay, well, he got 1 less target than he's had in 2 other games this season.
But it's Mark Andrews.
And he actually had 1 less reception than he had in 2 other games this season. And he actually only had 11 more yards more than his previous, set last week, by the way, previous season high.
Where he was like a half yard away from a touchdown.
And look, you can say, you're an idiot. I'm keeping Mark Andrews. Clearly, they're getting him more involved. Okay. Look, it's fine. Like,
sure.
Again, tight end is so crappy right now. I don't know if you even get anything for selling Mark Andrews. I'm just saying if you can, you do it. Because I'm just going to go to the Flock League right now, and I'm going to look who's on the freaking waiver wire for tight end, because I am just willing at this point to, you've got Komet on the waiver wire right now.
I am so thankful that I am so thankful that I faded tight end in the Flock League. So thankful.
Yeah, I honestly am too. I faded tight end.
It was the move this year, guys. It was the move by far. Brock Bowers was the pick, and he was, I think, between the two of us, our most picked tight end.
Yes, yeah, correct. Yep. So, regardless of that, I would much rather, like, if you can get anything. I'm talking about somebody who's barely flexible for Mark Andrews. Bye. I will stream tight end. I don't care. With Andrews, again,
by buy he means goodbye.
Buy.
Not like purchase.
Buy,
don't do that.
No.
Don't purchase.
But again, with Andrews, everything we were concerned about last week, we're still concerned about this week. But he got a touchdown. But we're still concerned, right? Yeah. And so that for that reason alone, I think it makes him a pretty prime sell candidate. So
DeAndre Swift is going to be our last guy here. I want to touch on him because I do think he's a very polarizing guy right now. It's been a tale of two halves for DeAndre Swift so far. 5, 8, and 6 points first 3 weeks of the year. Then he had 29, 20, and 21 points the last 3 weeks. An amazing, incredible, awesome, super cool stretch for DeAndre Swift and an offense that is on the rise. So why, Domain guys, would you say that DeAndre Swift is a sell when he's been doing this, over 20 points in 3 straight games? Why would you ever tell people to sell DeAndre Swift? There's a couple reasons here. Number one, his efficiency has been all over the place and his receiving usage has been all over the place. He has scored 3 straight touchdowns in these games where he has had 20 plus points. So that is, again, with the explosive upside ability and the touchdowns, you're probably talking about volatile plays that amount to about anywhere from like 8 to 10 points per game that you are adding, and you could just as easily take those away any given week, right? So you're looking at pretty much a range of like 8 to 20 some points from DeAndre Swift on a weekly basis because he is requiring a lot of explosive upside and getting some of those touchdowns even outside of the red zone. So with DeAndre Swift, I think you can take advantage of these really two polar opposite showings that are really nice sample sizes. And you can probably see that you're going to have a pretty consistent in between, I think, for the rest of the season. And one of the biggest reasons that we have for that is DJ Moore and the receiving assets in that offense, and Caleb Williams overall just getting better. I think one of the reasons Caleb Williams has been able to get better is guys like DeAndre Swift have stepped up. So I do want to give DeAndre Swift his flowers from like an NFL perspective, and even Shane Waldron, who I think has started to figure out how to really work those guys in that offense correctly, which he didn't do as effectively or consistently in Seattle. Hopefully that can carry on for the Bears as an offense. We want to see them do well. But at the end of the day, I don't trust DeAndre Swift to maintain this consistency when, again, his efficiency overall has been very inconsistent. Even in this nice productive stretch, he's gone from like 5.8 to 3.4 to back to over 5 yards per carry, 7 targets, down to 2 targets, to 4 targets, and touchdowns all in between. And then Roschon Johnson, we haven't even mentioned Roschon Johnson, who is continually on a weekly basis a touchdown threat as well. Any given week he can take away. Historically with DeAndre Swift, he is very hit or miss on a weekly basis. This is an impressive stretch for him. We saw this last year in a better offense in Philadelphia. I think he's going to come down to earth. Again, that's a projection. His snap share, his opportunity has been good, but we expected that from DeAndre Swift. They paid him to be that. Just from a fantasy perspective, I'm not buying that he's going to be this elite level running back for the rest of the season.
So there you go. Those are some guys, again, that we're going to be selling on our fantasy football teams. And you have the option to sell them. You don't have to sell them. We want to stress that we try to look at all of these from an objective. I think the most emotionally attached sell that we have is, of course, our Colts, right? And so I hope that you take from this video that we're just trying to look at
take it with a grain of salt.
An objective lens. So make sure you drop a like on the video. Make sure you're subscribed. And like I said, flockfantasy.com/domain if you want a team blueprint to help you get your fantasy team on the right track. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you later.